If you've ever bought a home in the UK, you'll know the pain of stamp duty, that dreaded tax that can add tens of thousands of pounds, even over 100 grand, the cost of moving. But here's the question. Why do we even have stamp duty? Where did it come from? What's it really funding? And is it actually keeping our housing market broken? Because right now, stamp duty is not just a little tax. It's one of HMRC's fastest growing revenue streams, pulling in more money than alcohol, fuel duty, or even inheritance tax. So let's break it down and start with the origins of stamp duty. Because stamp duty in Britain dates back over 300 years ago. It was introduced in 1694 during the reign of William III and Mary II. Back then, it wasn't about property at all. It was a tax on paper documents. So if you wanted your contract, your marriage license or will to be legally recognised, you had to pay a duty. And they marked it with an official stamp. So that's literally where the name comes from, stamp duty. Over time, it was extended to cover all sorts of things: newspapers, playing cards, insurance policies, and eventually land and property transactions. By the late 20th century, it become a quirky, old-fashioned tax on house purchases, but it only raised in the hundreds of millions a year, which is small in government terms. But then we saw a big shift in 1997. Everything changed in 1997. When Labour came into power, Gordon Brown, as Chancellor, introduced the concept of higher stamp duty bands above the lower bands. So up until then, stamp duty was 1% on purchases over £60,000. At this point, the Treasury received about £675 million a year from stamp duty. Then Gordon Brown introduced this in 1997. Then this in 1998. Then this in 1999. Then this in 2000, which, to be honest, is mad, isn't it? Year after year, he kept increasing and increasing stamp duty. Consider for a moment, the Treasury collected £675 million in stamp duty when Gordon Brown entered office in 1997. By 2000-2001, it increased to £1.5 billion. But then came 2003. Gordon Brown scrapped the old paper-based system. Till then, stamp duty was still based on stamping paper documents. And so he replaced it with stamp duty land tax. So now it applied automatically to property sales, a slicker, more modern digital system. In reality, the reason he did it was by modernising the system, it closed loopholes, captured more transactions, and gave HMRC a powerful and growing revenue stream as property values surged. And as we all know, they surged. Between 2000 and 2007, the average house price more than doubled. So stamp duty went from £675 million in 1997 to £1.5 billion over 2020-2021 to £6.7 billion before the 07-08 financial crash. Gordon Brown successfully 10x'd the volume of stamp duty he collected from when he started as Chancellor until he became Prime Minister in 2007. Of course, tinkering kept going. Stamp duty increased again, this time by Gordon Brown's Chancellor, Alistair Darling, in 2008. Then he did it again. Then again, the same year. Then came the David Cameron government, the Conservatives, and again, his Chancellor, George Osborne, couldn't help himself and kept increasing it. And as you guessed, the increases kept coming. In 2016, Osborne hit landlords and second home buyers with that 3% surcharge, which is now 5%. Each change brought in billions more in property stamp duty, land tax, and it became HMRC's golden goose. Let me show you why stamp duty is now so controversial. Just look at how the numbers have risen. It's mind-boggling. Today, stamp duty has been one of the HMRC's fastest growing revenue streams, which of course peaked over the COVID property boom, but is now taken a dive as transaction volumes have been falling since. And so it's no surprise that now, with the government's £51 billion black hole, that one way to help fund some of the gap is with the property market. What do you think Tony and Gordon will be advising him from their own experiences in government? But here's the catch. The government had tied its finances to high house prices. If prices fall, if transaction volumes fall, revenues fall. So there's a built-in incentive to keep property values inflated, even if it makes homes unaffordable for ordinary people, or at the very least keep transactions moving to keep collecting this tax. Hence why 100% mortgages are making a comeback. Hence why the FCA are relaxing lending rules, all in a bid to inflate the property market. And why we're seeing headlines about potential stamp duty changes, all in an overall bid to inflate the volume of revenue collected through stamp duty. It's madness. We should be focusing on building economic growth, which then organically increases tax revenues, not inflating asset prices, not selling off all our country's assets. But let's talk about who really pays. Now let's talk about who stamp duty hits the hardest. It's first-time buyers. Yes, there are exemptions up to £425,000, but in many parts of the country, especially London and the southeast, that's barely enough to cover starter homes. So first-time buyers either overstretch or get priced out. Upsizers, a family moving from a £400,000 home to a £600,000 home, aren't just paying the difference in property prices. They're paying £17,500 in stamp duty on top. It makes moving up the ladder punishingly expensive. Downsizers, even retirees wanting to move to a smaller property, face huge bills, discouraging them from freeing up family homes. It all adds up to one thing: fewer transactions, but worse, less mobility and a more frozen housing market. And importantly, the real cost is stamp duty doesn't just take money from buyers, it distorts the whole property market. It discourages moving, so people stay in homes that don't fit their needs. It reduces supply coming onto the market, pushing prices up higher. It traps wealth in housing instead of letting capital flow into more productive areas of the economy. Economists at the IFS and LSE have even argued it's one of the most damaging taxes to the UK per pound raised. Yet governments keep it because it's a cash cow. So let's talk about why it's back in the headlines. Right now, stamp duty is back in the news because of these leaked proposals suggesting a new super tax on homes worth over £500,000. Given the average house price in London is £536,000, that would mean the majority of London homes would fall into this higher tax band. It's being pitched as a way to raise revenue fairly, but let's be honest, it risks hammering already stretched homeowners and choking the market further. I think the more important question is, why do we still have stamp duty? Uncomfortable truth is this: stamp duty isn't there to help the housing market, it isn't there to help you move. It's there because it's an easy tax to collect and because governments have grown addicted to the revenue it generates. And as long as that's the case, reform will always be difficult because they'd rather you pay £15,000 extra on your home than raise income tax or VAT or anything else. So now you know why we have stamp duty and why it keeps getting worse. It's not about fairness, it's not about housing policy. It's about government revenue. But what do you think? Should stamp duty be scrapped, reformed, or is it fair that people who can afford to buy pay more tax? Let me know in the comments below. I'll be jumping in and replying to as many as I can. And if you found this breakdown helpful, check out my video up here, because stamp duty isn't just the only problem, it's part of a much bigger problem.